So welcome back, and we will move again now to the implementation issues, to the nitty and gritty of the implementation. In this session, we want to tackle a few questions, such as how do we maximize the impacts of research and development investment? How do we ensure that there is a link, a coherence between the regional development and an integration in the global value chains? So we have a very interesting panel of speakers, and we will indeed start with Ton van Lier, who is the coordinator of subsidy and public affairs of the city of Helmond in the Netherlands. And indeed, Ton is going to tell us about their experience on how to maximize the impact of investments in research and innovation. Please, Ton, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to share some of our experiences in the Eindhoven region, the Brainport Eindhoven region, for working in a smart specialization way for over 15 years and how to create and maximize impact. Perhaps I should clarify the position of the Brainport Eindhoven region. It's part of the Southeast Netherlands, and its innovation nucleus. The Southeast Netherlands in turn is part of 3 provinces, which compose the geography of the 2014-2020 operational program. And this is a kind of a blurry picture, but that's actually exactly the word we're working in. It's not confined by the boundaries of one administration. It's defined by the density and intensity of business and knowledge networks and relations. And that defines our challenges to create impact on innovation and competitiveness. We need to work on and work with different levels of stakeholders and governments. And when actually speaking of innovation, work on and work with different levels and scales of value chains, supply chains, clusters, networks, alliances. So we're working in a context that is not one-dimensional, but is complex and complicated. So how to make it simple, how to make things happen, how to steer in the right direction, and what instruments to use to create impact in such a context. When looking at maximizing impact, we shouldn't do this from the single perspective of EU instruments, but take into account the whole toolbox filled, to start with, by the business and knowledge community, and then by the government, central, regional, local, and the EU. Just to set the scene for the mission we proposed in our strategy. We build on the long-standing tradition of strategy development and implementation in a triple helix setting. And our most recent strategy stems from 2011 and is now under revision. It's our reference framework for collaborative and collective action, and it's an important building block for the smart specialization in relation to the operational program. And it points out a quite serious mission and ambition, as shown on the slide. Because we try to contribute an extra 40 billion extra to the Dutch GDP, and we try to achieve double growth figures in economic growth compared to the national average. So this is quite ambitious. Just to give you an overview of the innovation capacity and performance of the region. It really punches above its weight. It represents in the Netherlands 18% of the population, 25% of foreign direct investment, 26% of the research community, 35% of all exports, 45% of all private R&D, and 55% of the patent output. And in terms of GDP growth, the Eindhoven region has 50% better growth figures than the Dutch average. And when I presume you're quite familiar with the Commission's instruments on innovation, like the structural funds, Horizon 2020 and COSME, from a regional point of view, we also work in a framework of national instruments, and in our case, the Dutch innovation policy instruments. And our national policy is based on a sectoral approach, which to a high extent is supported by generic instruments, like tax credits and tax allowances. And these are, to a certain extent, topped up with sectoral specific actions for the top sectors. This is an instrumentation not everyone agrees with, as you can read in the quote on the slide. But it defines the landscape for the instrumentation of the national innovation policy in the Netherlands, and that's a context we are dealing with. Just to get a grasp of the order of magnitude of R&D activity in the region, I'd like to illustrate this with some figures. As shown in the slides before, the region is quite innovation intensive, mainly driven by the private sector. And as regards to increase the intensity of R&D, the aim is by 2020 to raise the public R&D expenditure from 350 million a year up to 650 million, and to raise the private R&D expenditure from the current 3.3 billion a year up to 4 billion. And the EU contribution on R&D activities, in retrospect, if we look at the framework program, had a contribution of 62 million on an annual basis, which added up to 435 million euros for 7 years, and is, in that sense, as such, substantial. The financial efforts to deliver the RIS3 add up to 2 billion a year, where the EU contribution is fairly modest, and a contribution of national government of 35%, and the region's contribution of about 62%, composed of contributions from regional and local authorities, the knowledge institutes, and the companies. There is a mix of resources because we have a policy mix where we act in 4 domains. And impact is about what you get out of an action and not what you put into it. Impact is about outcome. But to create output and outcome, you need input and instruments. And I want to give you an overview of the repartition of the resources we have used and are using to deliver the strategy to the ground. As shown in the previous slide, our strategy is quite ambitious. The strategy is of a comprehensive character, and actions are focused on 4 domains: people, human capital, technology, business and basics. And we aim at reinforcing the foundations of our regional innovation ecosystem, broadening its base and raise the top, and so perform better. And the graphs give you an overview of the resources allocated to these domains and how we fare quasi-midterm as per 2014 on inputs per domain compared to the target set for 2015. And there you see that, especially in the red pieces of the pie and the black ones, this is the regional contribution per domain. And in sheer numbers it adds up to 1.25 billion on the people domain, 1.8 billion in the technology domain, $500 million in the business domain, and 4.3 billion in the basics domain.
Sorry, what do you mean with basics?
This is basic, this is infrastructure, because in terms of strategy we think all we need to complement our ecosystem, we need to have a look at basics as well. The previous slide showed that the majority of the resources are regionally linked. Regional businesses, knowledge institutions, and regional and local government. So the regional level is where the alignment is important, as well as it is important to link these, preferably in a smart way, with the instruments of the central government and of the EU. And how does this fit in today's debate? How to maximize impact in this playing field of multiple stakeholders, multi-level governance, and multiple policy instruments? Is our toolbox appropriately filled and fit for the job? Let's have a look at the EU perspective. Can we maximize on structural funds? Well, not really. If you look at the dimensions and the money we have available, it's an envelope of 113 million, of which 66% is available for innovation activities for a period of 7 years. And compare this to the 2 billion we spent of the whole portfolio, it's not that much. Horizon 2020, possibly. But it's a hard competition, and the competition has gone harder compared to the framework program. The overall contribution is relatively low, albeit substantial in volume, still 435 million over the past 7 years. And the performance is built upon the engagement of individual organizations and not of the regions as such. You're not acting as a region in such a program. But EU money comes in the form of grants and are a welcome addition to national and regional instruments which have a different character. Tax credits, revolving funds. What about synergies between structural funds and Horizon? Has been touched upon by speakers earlier, which I fully agree with. I don't think we should push too hard on combining funds, but create synergies from the outset of the strategic agenda as such. And if we try too hard to combine funds, it would hamper, in a way, the simplification achieved in Horizon 2020. We don't have the matching money because the structural funds are not equally spread over Europe, so there's no matching capacity on our side, and there are a lot of practical constraints. But then again, the average amount of an FP7 partnership for a Dutch partner was 400,000 euros per participation. That's the highest in the FP7 program. So that's a kind of maximum. But we try to do better, because if we see the number of participants participating very often is fairly low. It's lower than 10 for those organizations who do more than one project a year. So that's fairly less. So we try to stimulate to make more use of the Horizon program by more partners. There are differences across the EU. The graph shows that the possibilities to steer with public resources do vary across the EU. So you have way more traction where the public spend is way higher and relatively high. The influence of public resources is way bigger on the left-hand side of the graph and not on the right-hand side where the Netherlands is situated. These differences are significant and point towards a demand for a differentiation in approach in the EU, since the level of steering capacity of the instruments varies significantly. Given these differences between the member states and regions from the outset, there can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. Hence, there is a need for differentiation, and hence there will be differences in impact, and this impact won't come seamlessly and instantly. You create it over time. The time factor, focus and continuity are important for building capacities and subsequently deliver performance. Maximizing impact depends on the power and sophistication of a shared, collective, strategic agenda with shared ownership. That's very important to create innovation ecosystems. Strategy should be developed at different levels of granularity, a comprehensive all-over picture and different levels of action, the actual building blocks that make it able to deliver the strategy to the ground. And let me give you later on 2 examples on the cross-cutting areas of the technology and business domain in our agenda on automotive and smart mobility on the one hand and the photovoltaic industry on the other hand. Just to give you an overview of the automotive industry in the Netherlands, it represents a turnover of 17 billion euros a year, 45,000 employees. There are some OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, especially in buses and trucks, but the majority of the businesses in the automotive comes from suppliers, and 50% of those companies are situated in the south of the Netherlands. So for us, for our smart specialization strategy, automotive and smart mobility is very important. And actually they followed a process within the industry of organization of stakeholders to establish a basic level of understanding, respect and trust for sharing knowledge. And based on that, they defined a shared vision. Align individual goals with long-term ambitions of the region and in this sense the sector. And they started with the development of technology and innovation roadmaps, identifying the gaps between the current transition and future requirements. And based on that, they came to the selection of innovation focus areas to concentrate the available resources on specific fields of technology and applications. And for automotive specifically, that is smart mobility, connected car, traffic management and vehicle dynamics control, and green mobility focused on internal combustion engine powertrains, future powertrains like electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles and energy saving. And to carry this out, you create platforms and triple helix kind of collaborations. And one example, especially in the smart mobility area, is the Dutch integrated test site for cooperative mobility. It's a public-private partnership and it aims to realize a shared program on how to get cooperative driving solutions deployed. It aims to accelerate the development of products and services by working together on pre-competitive topics and by sharing resources, tooling, experience and facilities. The DITSM Innovations Roadmap brings together programs by the Dutch public, private partners, academic partners and links those technologies to governmental policies and societal goals. It's a true triple helix collaboration in this specific field and is built on 2 pillars, a pre-competitive innovation program supported by shared facilities to provide the infrastructure for operational testbeds and living labs. Another example is Soliance. Soliance is a partnership of ECN, IMEC, TNO, the Dutch RTO, Holst Center, Eindhoven University of Technology, Forschungszentrum Jülich, University Hasselt and Delft University of Technology. And it offers participation in its research program and opens up its lab facilities to new entrants, either from industry or in research. On the basis of clear intellectual property agreements, each industrial partner can participate in the research effort, or alternatively hire equipment and experts to further develop its own technology. It's about creating platforms for enhancing performance. It's bringing together all the thin film PV R&D in the Netherlands, Belgium and part of Germany. It's cross-border. To create critical mass in order to stay significant in the global market, built on assets of being strong materials and equipment suppliers. For time's sake, just 2 examples I touch upon today. But many more similar risk-free building blocks are present in the region, like the possibility of a photonics cluster, where the patent density is the highest in Europe and is representing 12% of the patents on photonics, so we have a base to start a new pocket of strength possibly over there. Advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, related to the Vanguard initiative. Very important. New means of creating value have been developed everywhere in the form of ever denser and richer networks of connection, collaboration and interdependence. Innovative businesses can't evolve in a vacuum. They must attract resources of all sorts, drawing in capital, partners, suppliers and customers to create cooperative networks. Maximizing impact is based on shared collective agenda with shared ownership to create innovation ecosystem. Finding ways beyond the capacity of a single organization to enhance the connectivity across specialized capabilities and resources by creating a shared ecosystem from which individual organizations can derive mutual benefit. And through building of layers of infrastructures, platforms as you like, I showed some examples, that create a system in which many organizations can operate for their own gains and improve collective competitiveness and regional economic performance, resulting in growth and jobs. And collective ownership should be paramount when developing a strategic agenda from the outset. And our challenge now for Rainport is to keep our momentum, keeping the track of the speed of change and invest in the adaptability of the innovation ecosystem in order to be responsive to the dynamics of the global economy and the needs of global society. Thank you.
Thank you very much for telling us, this story of the Brainport Eindhoven and which are the elements of their success. So we learned that shared ownership is a way to maximizing impacts. I would like to ask the audience if there is any burning question to Ton before we move to the next presentation. Yeah, please. The microphone is coming. Okay.
Thanks. I come from a small region in Finland, and we are trying very hard to implement and have this renewal of the economy. I want to ask you the following 2 things. Number 1, the innovation platforms, are they strategy or research or business motivated? And number 2, I want to ask you, what is the role of big businesses in driving the growth? Thanks.
The platforms are by definition business-oriented, but with input from the science and the RTO sector, because they can provide the platform, they provide facilities and so on. So they are by definition business-driven with input from the research side, being universities, and the RTOs as well. TNO is participating in the DITSM initiative, and actually smart mobility is one of the most important research areas of Eindhoven University of Technology. So there's, based on content, a perfect alignment of interests of industry, the RTOs, and the university.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and now we will move to, if there are no other questions just on this presentation, we will move to the next presentation, which is will be made by Cristina Ollón, from the, which is the head of the strategic initiative, the Business Development Agency in the Basque Country. And yeah, Cristina is going to tell us about the experience of this region, which is also one of the virtuous regions in Europe. The floor is yours, Cristina.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this session, and also to apologize for not using the common template. I realize now that I missed at least one mail. So the objective of my presentation is to give you an overview of how we have implemented the operational program of our structural funds for the 2014-2020 period, and how we have done it, I think that very much aligned with our smart specialization strategy. So first of all, a very brief introduction of our region, and the first thing that I would like to highlight is that we are a very industrial region. Now 20%, almost 20% of our GDP comes from manufacturing activities, but this percentage, well, and you have here some other data about the activity of our manufacturing industry that is very much internationalized, and covers a big part of our research and development activities, and also employs 20% of our people. But these figures have been decreasing during the last years, as well as in other industrial economies, bigger and more important than ours, of course, but is a trend that we have also measured. And this is one of the things that are driving right now our competitiveness policies. As you can see here, we came in 2005 from a 25% of our GDP in manufacturing activities, and now we are reaching this 20%, almost reaching this 20% that is also in the strategy of Europe in this renaissance of the European industry. What we have been measuring with worry this decreasing of our activity, but what we have also measured, and we had the opportunity to do it for the first time, unfortunately in a crisis time, is that the sectors in our region that have had better performance during these crisis years have been the ones more intensive in technology. So an idea that is overall, and that we have always worked with this idea of we have to invest, and we have to evolve to a more technologically intense region and economy. Now we have the data to justify this interest. So with this situation, or these ideas in the Basque government, we have during the last years we are addressing what we call the transformation of our economy. And the current context, with this current context of our economy, what we are trying to align is these four drivers of our industrial competitiveness. So we have tried to align the design of our smart specialization strategy. We have a long tradition of planification of science and technology plans, and for us the smart specialization strategy it is just an evolution of our last plans. I remember that I participated in the Science Technology Plan 2010, and we already tried to prioritize or select, and we define a very nice logo for our plan that our strategy was half more or less for maintaining the present and half of them for building the future. So in this building the future, we started to work with some strategic areas. I don't know if this was a smart specialization, but it was a specialization or at least diversification of our economy towards a more intense, technological intense areas. So with but now the smart specialization strategy process has given us the opportunity to give one step forward in this prioritization and in this selection of areas where we understand that we have more return of our investment. But we have worked this activity, this process of defining our smart specialization strategy within this framework of different competitiveness policies, such as the reshaping of our cluster policy. We have also a very long history of implementing a cluster policy, and now in 2014 we have made an important and a structural revision of our strategy. We also are in the middle of this revamping of our science, technology and innovation network, and all of this we are trying to put this into the context of these rebalances of the tools that we have for the implementation of these policies. So for us, we are trying to work these four ideas together, and in this framework is where also we are trying to embed the activity of, or embed the operational program, the structural funds. So some data about our structural funds. On the first hand, well, we had, of course, worked with the Commission in all the process for implementing the new operational program 2014-2020, and in our ex-ante evaluation, it was more or less, it was clear that our strategy is aligned with the achievement of the objectives of the European 2020 strategy. Also, well, I wanted to highlight that the structural funds has little relevance in quantitative terms in the context of the Basque economy. You have here same data, so we have like 25 million euros per year coming from these structural funds, and this accounts for very low rates in other indicators of our competitiveness policies. Nevertheless, the exercise of the operational program is very useful for us because it helps us or forces us to align all regional strategies in different areas. So this idea of, I proposed in the previous slide that we really want to align the different tools and the different policies that we have around the competitiveness concept. The structural funds is like a revolving activity for this real alignment of our areas. It also contributes to the coordination and relationship of the different administrative levels in our government, which is really also very important. So it's we are always asking our companies to be more innovative, more collaborative, and more internationalized, and it's something that we at the administration we should also have as homework. So the structural funds, or the methodology of programming the structural funds contributes very much to this alignment of our administration. So this is what we have tried in the, well, we have also a long tradition of using structural funds for research and development activity, so it's not really new for us, but what we have tried in this period is to concentrate the structural funds, and you can see here in this chart that, sorry, I realize now that the numbers are in, or the chart is in Spanish, so we address almost 45% of the structural funds to research and development activities. So in the case of this 44.6%, what we well, we try to use the structural funds, or we are using the structural funds in the programs that we have to support research and development led by companies. This is not new. We have been using our structural funds for a long time. What is new is that now we want to align the resources that we use in this programs towards the 3 domains that we have selected as priority domains for our smart specialization. As Tom said before, we are trying to move forward the concept of sectors or prioritizing sectors, but what we have in our smart and specialization strategy, we have tried to work with domains or areas where different industrial sectors can converge. So our 3 domains are biosciences applied to human health, advanced manufacturing, and energy. And our programs are now programs that have been working for some years, as you will see later, what have always been horizontal programs, but now we are trying to prioritize and to focus our resources in these 3 in projects around these 3 domains. So, just to put into context the structural funds, the Science, Technology and Innovation Plan 2020 that is now running in our region and that embedded the smart specialization strategy aims at the public-private investment around 11,000 million euros. The structural funds will contribute for the whole period to this effort with around 100 million euros. And as I said, these 100 million euros will come to our programs, but we are trying to focus in the programs that support research and development in our companies. So in the other areas, ICT, the thematic objective number 2, we are dedicating 10% of our structural funds, and with the idea of, on the one hand, to keep on supporting the deployment of infrastructures for ICTs, but also in line with this idea of aligning resources, we are also establishing new programs and new ideas to help the incorporation of information technologies in our manufacturing industries. So this advanced manufacturing priority that is in our RIS3 strategy is aligned with the activity that we want to develop from the ICT activity that up to now was much more focused in the deployment of infrastructure, yes, and also in the incorporation of information technologies in our society. We are now very much focused in the incorporation of these information technologies in our manufacturing industries with these ideas of giving more intelligence to the manufacturing processes. Also, the thematic objective number 3 gets around 9% of our structural funds, and we have like 2 main ideas also in this area, that is to support entrepreneurship. And again, we are going to support entrepreneurship mainly in the areas that we have prioritized in our RIS3, that is energy, biosciences applied to human health, and advanced manufacturing. So, and also we would like to support the SMEs competitiveness through the incorporation of these advanced services that has a lot to do with the concepts of advanced manufacturing, the transformation of business models, and in order to incorporate more intelligence and more information technologies in these SMEs. In the case of the low carbon economy is the second...
sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, the second thematic objective where we are working in, and in this case we are again aligning some of these resources to our research and development strategy, because we are trying to develop infrastructure for research demonstrations. We are trying to promote emerging energy sectors such as marine renewable energies, and we are also trying to promote something that has been said before, that is the international cooperation, and our aim in participating very actively in the Vanguard initiative comes also from this idea of using our part of our structural funds, this 15%, in areas where the international cooperation could be useful for our strategies, being one of these areas, marine renewable energies. So again, everything will be or it's coordinated within the different thematic objectives for our structural funds. This is the slide that shows how we are trying to align or rebalance the research, development and innovation tools, and we have now incorporated recently in this scheme the industrial scaling up. We really want to move forward or move ahead in this technology business level scale and support our companies and support our development also in this industrial scaling aid, where we are investing now in new tools such as these infrastructures for advanced manufacturing centers or infrastructures for testing and demonstrators, as in the case of marine renewable energies, that again goes with the thematic objective number 4. So this is where we are, as I said, this is where we are trying to use our structural funds and trying to combine all of this around these 3 priority areas that are the base of our smart specialization strategy. I have included a couple of difficult slides because Ana Maria asked me to talk a little bit about 2 things, to give details about the research and development programs that in which we are using the structural funds, and we have mainly these 2. GAITEC is the name of one of the programs, is in Basque language. Projects for the development of new products and or the creation of new technology-based companies. It's not a new program, as you can see, or maybe you cannot see, but you will have the information. We have been working. Here are the data from 2005, but I think that we started before, and here you have the data of the number of projects, the number of companies that have been part of these programs, and the number of funding that we have provided to these projects, and the number and the figures of the money that have been invested by the companies. In the other program, the name is Etorgai, and it's a cooperative project, try to fund cooperative projects for industrial research and experimental development with a strong strategic character. These projects had a minimum budget of 4 million euros, and you have here some data about which kind of support we have been giving to these projects. As you can see, the funding of one of these projects is very much above the structural funds that we can use in this activity, but these programs are used for co-financing our structural funds. And well, that's all, because I don't have more time. If you have any questions. Thank you.
Indeed, I would like, thank you very much, Cristina. I would like to ask the audience if there is any burning question on this presentation or need for clarification before we move to the next one. Actually, I have one, and it's about, I mean, you mentioned a very interesting point that you are currently refining the smart specialization strategy in order to orient it towards more return for investment. How are you, which is a very, I mean, it's a very interesting issue for most of the audience, because we have always, I mean, talked about the smart specialization strategy as a living document. Mm-hmm. But how are you doing, in your experience, how are you doing it? Are you looking at the clusters more, or are you, it's a complex exercise, yeah, of course.
Well, in principle, we are not doing anything special, because it's the way that we have been working during the last years. So we have always a process of definition of our strategies, definition of our plans, but they keep on going continuously. For example, in the case of our smart specialization strategy, we defined it before 2014, the previous plan, and we decided, or we defined these 3 main priority domains. But what it's included in these priority domains is continuously being redefined. In fact, during 2014, we dedicate the year to define what is in this, inside this domain of advanced manufacturing, and now this year we are in the process of doing the same with this circle that is energy. So the energy strategy, the last one that we produced was in 2011, and with the data of this, this roadmap, this strategy that we defined in 2011, this was what was incorporated in our research, in our RIS3 process. Now, we understand that it's time to change or to update the strategy in energy, and we are defining it in a working group that includes, of course, the cluster of energy, the science and technology agents working in the energy sector in our region, and also with the Basque Energy Board and our organization. So this is something that is like keep on going with the work as every year.
Thank you very much, Christina. And now we'll move to another presentation given by Päivi Ekdahl. She is the director of the Regional Council of Lapland. And a very interesting element of the presentation of Päivi is that she's going to talk about how do they include the regional economy within the global value chain in Lapland. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna-Maria. Dear colleagues, greetings from Lapland, the northernmost region of Europe. In my presentation, I will just give you first some background on how we came up with our smart specialization strategy, some facts of our challenges that have brought us into this. Lapland is far more smaller than most of the regions that have been presented here earlier. It's not smallest in size, because in size it is 100,000 square kilometers, which could include 3 times Belgium. But it is small in regard to inhabitants, of course. We have 180,000 inhabitants in Lapland. So it's less than 2 inhabitants per square kilometer. In addition to our inhabitants, we have 200,000 reindeers. We have Sami, the only indigenous people in Europe, of course together with Sweden, Norway and Russia, because the Sami people are living in all of those 4 countries. And we have Santa Claus, of course. Here in this picture you can see the brand of Lapland. Our brand is that Lapland is above the ordinary. My headline to this presentation is how we would like to bring Lapland to visible for the rest of Europe, to be visibly smart. This is quite often the map that is presented in different kind of seminars. You can see that the northernmost Europe is out from this map. And this map, unfortunately, is quite often presented also in presentations of people working in European Commission. And that's one thing we are working with. We are trying to remind that we exist. And if we are not included into this kind of maps, it's too easy to forget. This is another kind of map. And this is quite often how we would like to see the Europe. And this is where we want to change our own minds also towards this. Quite often we stand there in the north parts of Finland and we think that the Europe and the world is behind our backs. And we are facing to the north. But turning the map around, of course, we can see clearly that the whole world is actually in front of our faces, and all the opportunities that it brings is in front of our faces. We have also a lot to offer to the rest of the Europe and to the rest of the world, Lapland being an in core of the Arctic region. And our position in the Arctic region actually is one core issue also in our smart specialization program, which is called Lapland Arctic Specialization Program. Lapland is Europe's gateway to the Arctic, and that's why we want to be visible also, because we want that we are able to participate and we are able to offer Europe what it really needs in order to be also smart in that way. We have vast deposit of natural resources. On the other hand, we have really pristine nature. We have huge potential and needs for innovation and entrepreneurial development, but we have, of course, some challenges due to this to maintain the balance. One good example of this is that we have a really living economy in tourism, but also mining activities, and we have to make these two to live sustainably with each other. Understandably, we have lack of critical mass, having only 180,000 people, so there are too few smart people in the region. As a result of this, of course, we need the regional educators and research and development actors, and their importance is increasing all the time. By building this smart specialization program, we wanted to take lead in taking our development into our own hands. And we started thinking that how is the future? And shall we only wait so that someone else makes the future for us, or do we want to make it by ourselves? Quite often we find ourselves in these situations. People keep saying, and from different sectors and different levels, that hasn't this been done already? The same was with the smart specialization strategies. We faced quite strong comments and negative ideas at the beginning, for example, in Finland from our national ministries. Because, of course, innovation strategies have been there for a long time, and it was seen that this smart specialization is actually the same, like a repetition of the innovation strategies. But in order to renew our activities, our leading idea was that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We do understand that it is not wise. But if the wheel doesn't roll properly, so why wouldn't we do something about it? And also, as here in the picture, sometimes we should stop and not rush to new things, but just stop and think if we could use some other mechanisms, other weapons to do the change. And we wish that our smart specialization strategy can be this machine gun wins those who are fighting with old weapons. Just shortly about how we did the whole process. Of course, we didn't start it from the beginning. We used a huge amount of existing materials and existing analysis, foresight studies, and so on. And the work, what is most important, that our work with this Arctic specialization strategy was closely integrated with our regional development program work and also of the work of Lapland University Consortium's innovation program. So they were prepared hand in hand. We know that as there are not too many people in the region who are working with these issues, we have to keep everything simple. We have to find a way to do it, but to do it with as few efforts as possible. We have, of course, put our goals, what we want to be in future. And all this we want to do by combining the dimensions of sustainability and our visions of the future Lapland. In our strategy, we have identified the pillar industries of the regional economy, those being mining and metal industries, bioeconomy, and tourism and related industries. But of course, this is not enough. This is what we know. Of course, it was important work to highlight these and to recognize these, that these are those that are now at the moment important. We made the development priorities. They all go around Arctic issues, refining, utilizing, and cross-cutting development. In order to have new ideas, new business ideas, of course we need to put this strategy into practice. And what we are doing at the moment is that we are searching for what has been done before. We have gone through around 650 projects financed from the last program period, mainly from ESIF financing, but also some from Interreg and other financing sources. And from those, we have done some clusters to search for that kind of clusters that could be implemented as raising up new businesses. These 5 that are here described: clean tech of Arctic industries, Arctic smart rural communities, Arctic design, Arctic safety and security, and Arctic innovations and testing environments, are actually such that go across these pillar industries. So from those corners of those 2, so then there we think that we can find the ideas for new businesses. So these 5 are cross-cutting all those pillar industries. Regional Council of Lapland actually is acting as an intermediate body for this mainstream program and thinking about how this smart specialization program is implemented via structural funds. Of course, they go hand in hand, but our perspective has been that with this smart specialization program, we have not done like a roadmap for structural funds or anything like that. But our Arctic specialization program is like a roadmap for our actors to give us direction and to give us targets and strategical way of going forward. And these financing sources are used, of course, but not so that all the activities would be financed from structural funds, but the activities, they have to find the correct financial tool for activities. So all the possible financing use are used. In addition to structural funds, of course, we have Interreg programs. We have Interreg North program. We have Northern Periphery and the Arctic program. And of course, not to be forgotten, we have also this neighborhood program, ENPI previously, and ENI programs in the future. And at the moment we are working with the clusters that have been identified to be potential for the future. And to all of these activities, the organizations implementing the projects and making the development issues, it's their responsibility, of course, to find the correct financing tool. And here as a last slide, here is collected some ideas how to, actually what has been done by now, what are our plans. This is like a puzzle. All of these pieces of this puzzle, they are here like different kind of financing instruments that are used. And of course this S3 development has a strategic approach towards our regional development. But also it is done to attract other financing to the region. And to make like the separation that or maybe talking about, when talking about the synergies of the financing or synergies of the programs, we don't see it so much that the financing itself has to be in synergy with other financing. But more we see that we have different kind of programs which have different kind of opportunities and possibilities. Structural funds, they develop the operational environment and build the capacity in the region. For Horizon 2020, increases research and innovation capacity. There is Erasmus Plus to develop education, COSME to strengthen the SMEs, European territorial cooperation to learn from each other, and other specific programs. And the synergy is, in a way, how we combine all of these instruments. Ideas have been raised in that we could find, for example, organize joint call for proposals between the national structural funds, Interreg programs, and possible even ENI programs, so that we could put more efforts to our strategic goals. Somehow we just have to find out that in order to implement this strategy, we have to find the correct pockets in a way where we take all the financing for these purposes. Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Päivi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much also for bringing in the WIRE conference a new geographical perspective which we didn't have so far. So the last intervention, any burning question before we move to the last intervention, which is the intervention of Gunta Araya, Deputy Secretary of State of the Ministry of Education and Science of the Latvian Republic. And Gunta, she will tell us about their experience with the smart specialization strategy. Please.
So, thank you, and good morning, everybody. So, our experience, I can't say that we have had big experience because this was first time when we discuss in our country our smart specialization strategy priorities and define our directions of investment in this regard. Therefore, this is short outcome of our discussions where we finally agree on 3 directions of our development and investments, 6 priorities and 5 specialization areas. It wasn't quite easy process because until now there was a small country. We say that everyone or everybody who can innovate, who can give added value is as well valuable for us, and therefore it was difficult to our common goal is to increase innovation capacity and to increase innovation and to create innovation system that promotes growth of economy, and this is the main strategy. So where we are now, unfortunately, our innovation performance is still modest. And our strategic goal for 2022 is to become innovation followers. It's quite ambitious, but we think that it's possible to do in common work. So why we are there where we are? We identified five, I can say, main problems in our innovation system. And first of all, our current business model is weakly focused on innovation. Innovation in classic way as it's understood in majority of countries, and therefore weak cooperation between the business sector and researchers is the second one. And of course, as outcome comes insufficient use of creative and intellectual capital for innovating. Still, our education system does not ensure correspondence between labor demand and supply. And of course, our science and research capacity is still insufficient in order to be support or development actor for innovations. And of course, our big difference between capital and other cities and towns, in fact, monocentric development of country. And how we plan to solve it? It is a map of our structural funds programs and other main programs from state budget and other financial instruments. And we decided that we need to strengthen all three pillars: science and research, education and business part, in order to create new environment for economical development. And therefore, in this research and innovation part, you can see with red, those are all structural funds programs, and there is mentioned some main as well, other state budget funded programs. And in education sector, those all are structural funds investments planned for next period in order to give this contribution to development of economical growth. So, yes, and if we see our main problems, and then we put like such flowers in order to show how we try to solve our problems, which instruments and in which way. And so, as regards weak cooperation between the business sector and science, which is one of the, in our discussions, one of the main issues, then we put on the field grants for postdoctoral research. This is first time when we open such a program in Latvia. We still will continue practically oriented research programs. Still, our colleagues from Ministry of Economy will provide support for competence centers, technology transfer programs, and as well, Ministry of Agriculture will provide programs for specifically in field of forest management. We have done already quite big reforms in education sector, but still there are some gaps and some needs for more investments, and therefore not only infrastructure of all levels of education, but as well study programs content, VET programs content, and general education content will be developed and restructured in order to go to competence-based content provision in all levels of education until 2022. And as well, in vocational education, we will introduce work-based learning and work-based training for VET programs, which is as well some novelty in our country. So, the same is as regards research capacity, science and research capacity, and there is as well national programs for as national research programs, science-based funding, which is partially used as co-funding for structural funds, and other programs, for example, European territorial cooperation programs, Horizon, and etc. And of course, there are some investments foreseen in order to split our economical activity between the whole country, not only in Riga as the main actor of economical activity. And yeah. What we plan to achieve in 2020 by all those investments, it's shown in this table. And not only the infrastructure or the cooperation instruments, people as well is quite important direction of investment, because research and development personnel in 2013, in not only in public but as well in private sector, was 5.5 thousand people. But we, in order to be effective and in order to develop and innovate, according to our forecasts, there should be at least 7,000 people working in this area, and therefore it is that one of our investment directions that we invest in people.
We have 2 more minutes.
Yep. And how we plan to monitor it. So this is my last slide, because as I said in the beginning, it was first time when we defined those priorities, and we still are thinking that they may change during the process, and therefore we created platforms for discussions when we open or reopen some programs. Then before and in the middle of the program we plan to evaluate performance and maybe set additional goals and indicators, and therefore in order to use in the possible best way our structural funds and other financial instruments or financial resources available for development of research, innovation and technologies and education. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rinka. Thanks a lot. So now we can move, to collect some questions, some observations, some experience from the audience. Anyone who would like to start?
Juris Balodis, Latvijas Tehnologiskās centre. Now I have a question to Gunta Araja. You very perfectly outlined problems which face Latvia. Can you comment about the stage of development of these activities or instruments which will tackle these problems? And is there any place in internet where can we see all these options to tackle some of these problems? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We are now from beginning of year, we start to discuss our new programs, and all actual information or all newest information is available on Ministry's web page in the part where all structural funds information and activities are described, and where the information is available. And in cooperation with our State Education Development Agency, when we open new program, we use the platform of smart specialization priorities discussions. And now we, in fact, previous 2-3 weeks, we discussed practical research program, and we will continue those discussions with every of 6 programs which are foreseen in our structural funds investments plan. And we hope that until end of the year, at least first round of discussions about all programs will be carried out. I hope.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, here, there is one person here, the lady.
Hello, Anja Järum from the Research Council of Norway. You all have, I think Latvia has one S3 strategy for the whole country, and you don't have regional strategies, but the others are regional strategies. And my question is, could you elaborate a little bit on how the regional strategies are sort of connected with other regional and national strategies, or if they're sort of side by side?
Thank you. So, I guess the Basque country can, even Christina could reply, or even Tom, or you as well. Yeah, I mean.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, in Finland we do have, that is correct, we do have like regional smart specialization strategies. And we do cooperate. We have actually like a macro region of East and North Finland with a close cooperation with 7 regions. 7 most eastern and northern regions of Finland, and we have collected all our 7 smart specialization programs and we are like constantly seeing what issues there are that connect these strategies to each other. So we are having these discussions and implementing the same like mainstream programs, so we have quite good cooperation all the time ongoing. And with the national issues, of course, in like national, there is not such a thing that national smart specialization program, but of course like national innovation program. And of course our like guidelines and structures and limits, they come from that. And of course we follow our national strategies within the implementation of the regional strategies. So they are like going hand in hand all the time.
Well, in our case, the Basque country is very actively involved in the different meetings and activities that the Spanish government has organized around the definition of a smart specialization. We belong to the committees that has been created in order to have like a forum of benchmarking and a place to share our worries about the definition and implementation of the smart specialization. But nevertheless, the definition of the domains and the activities that we have defined are very much specific of our region because, our economic structure is quite different of the general economic structure of Spain. It's also, in the case of Spain, the operational program or the managing authority of the operational program is the Spanish government. So we are very much related with the Spanish government and in close cooperation with them, but we have the freedom of organizing our smart specialization strategy, taking into account our features and our aims.
And for our situation is that some of the focus areas overlap or correspond with the top sector policy of the Dutch national policy, but in terms of instrumentation, this is mainly done by tax credits, as already said, and by aligning efforts of knowledge institutes and companies to work together in this kind of sectors. But where the place-based component comes in, there the decentral authorities are in charge. So that's where they take a stake. So embedding these sectors in the region, that's a responsibility and that's a part of our strategy as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Yes,
okay. If I still can continue, because I just wanted to mention also other kind of cooperation that we do in addition to this of Finland, East and North Finland. We cooperate also in the level of northern sparsely populated areas. Mm-hmm. So there is like a network, living network between the northern regions of Finland, Sweden and Norway, and there are like altogether 14 regions in that network. In Sweden there is a national smart specialization strategy, so in Norrbotten and Västerbotten regions there is no regional, but of course they have their regional like priorities, and what is I think really interesting is that, for example, in Norway, which is not an EU country, they have also started and also already partly like developed and prepared their smart specialization strategy. So they are in a way looked at it's a good perspective and they want to implement it also. And within this NSPA region we have now just during this spring launched together with OECD a regional review of this NSPA region, and we think that also from all the other information it also gives us more information on specific regions, and based on that we have been talking to start developing the smart specialization of the program of the NSPA region, so in a way to go beyond our own regions and countries, but to make a common one, and that's a way of course to direct us using this Interreg financing, for example.
Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yes, here we have one.
I'm Zsolt Becsey from the Ministry for National Economy of Hungary. Based on your presentation, I have a question actually, because I think that you have pretty much covered the whole TRS scale from prototyping to demonstration, but every successful project ends with marketization. So you put your product on the market, and I would be curious to know how did you do this in your region? I mean, does the market do it by itself, and you don't need EU instruments to do that, or you use the financial instruments provided by the EU, or you had a third solution? So how did marketization work in your case? Thank you.
Would you like to start, Tom?
I can start. Yeah. Well, the business part is a part of our strategy, so we're paying attention to businesses to perform better and in a way support entrepreneurship. That is an integral part of the strategy itself. But we're not managing the whole value chain or innovation chain as such, because being successful in the market is something businesses do. They try and find the market and try and find market entries. The interesting part is, of course, that by the multidisciplinary collaboration, for instance, on smart mobility, the market still has to settle and set. We don't know how it's going to develop, but there is technology in place, a way to offer smart mobility possibilities, from connected cars up to completely automated guided cars. And this is where this technology comes in place and where the collaboration starts. where you have input from knowledge institutes, but where the policy makers and the authorities are part of the program as well, because you're addressing a societal challenge, and where the businesses are in, because this kind of opportunities create a market as such, but that's their responsibility to make money out of the products they develop.
Thank you, Ton. Are there any experience in the Basque Country on how to support market access of products?
Well, this is the final aim of all of our competitiveness policies, but we cannot support or give too much support to these phases because this has a lot to do with the competitiveness of the private companies. So we try to create the ecosystem where this commercialization could be easier, but we cannot do too much or support economically the last phases of this commercialization. What we are really trying to do is to, as I said, to create this ecosystem where we try to embed all the different kind of tools that we have in the part of research and development. We are trying to evolve towards more demonstration activities, towards these activities that are difficult in this, so this famous Death Valley, and also we try to align other activities in terms of internationalization support, or also the support for the creation of new companies. So the point is that this, in the aim of our smart specialization strategy, and in the center of the Basque innovation system that we are trying to build are the companies. So all what we try to do is to support this commercialization, although it's not directly easy to do.
Thank you very much, Christina. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. So I would like to thank you all for the attention, to thank the speakers for sharing their experience with us all, and I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you.